We live. Yeah, we live. All right. Shalom. Shalom. Y'all can still hear me okay? Everything
Yes,
is
sir.
good?
Loud and clear.
Where we here, man. This is the Children Bread NGO. And we have a special guest today. We have Brother Victor in here all the way from Puerto Rico. All the way in Puerto Rico over there, man.
Yes, sir.
Uh
Pleasure to be here.
Man, we happy to have you here, man. I'm gonna get you to introduce yourself in a second, but before I do that, I want to just let everybody know that this is the Children Bread NGO, and our goal is to be a vessel to unite our brothers and sisters of the Hebrew Israelite diaspora, unite us underneath one declaration, so we can start building these institutions, underneath a declaration, even with our different communities, but build these institutions until we can be recognized as a nation, and get our autonomy. And then the Children Bread also, we actually fight. We have a whole program where we fight against poverty, and we build institutions and things in that manner to fight against poverty in a strategic way. So, with that being said, we got our brother Victor all the way from Puerto Rico, man. Tell the people about yourself, my brother. Tell the world about you.
Hey, shalom, everybody. Well, I'm out here in Puerto Rico, like the brother mentioned. I've been out here for a few years. My family's been here for a long time, ever since the expulsion from Spain and Portugal. So, we've been here for a while. I lived in the States for a little while, served in the military for a while. I'm a trained lawyer. I'm also completing my master's in divinity with the concentration in biblical languages. My focus on Second Temple period material as well. Just to kind of get an idea of what you're also, discussing, because it's important to know our past. We want to repeat it right now. So I'm honored to be here, pleasure to be here, man. And that the goal is to bring unity and understanding, and bring to the table what we've learned throughout all these years, man. We've known each other for a long time. We've been through life all these years, so it's good to finally actually catch up with you as well, and also meet the other brothers that are present. So shalom, everybody.
Definitely, man. And I'm gonna introduce the rest of the brothers. We got brother Benaiah over here, man, and he's the chairman over there in Tanzania, man. Say what's up to the people, man. And then we'll just introduce everybody.
Hey, shalom, everybody. Yes, I'm Brother Benaiah of the Children's Bread Tanzania branch. Yeah, I'm just happy to be here and happy to hear what the brother got to say. You know, how you got it laid out with the questions and things of that sort. I'm just excited to be here, man. I just want to see how everything goes. And another shalom to the guests. Shalom, brother. And that's it. That's all I got.
All praises, man. We got brother Ibar in here. He's a director on the children board on the Children Bread, and he's on the board of directors. He's over there in Tanzania too, man. So what's up to the people? What's going on with it, man?
Shalom, man. Thanks most high for being here, man. Thanks for inviting me on your platform. Shalom to all the brothers on here. Like the Appanaya said, hey, I'm just thankful to be here. Just want to see where this going.
Man, we're gonna get it in, man. We're gonna talk some
stuff.
some good stuff, some good history, man. And then I got my brother Anaya, man, in the building, man. Say what's shalom to the people, my brother. We gonna get it cracking, man.
Shabbat shalom to everybody. Shabbat shalom to the panel, to the guests, and we got a good one for the audience. Shalom.
Let's get it cracking. Let's get it cracking. So, brother Victor, my brother, man. I'm glad that we having this conversation, man. I ain't ready to hit you with no crazy sad questions or nothing, man. No, I ain't I ain't on no wild stuff, man. I'm really, just really on a mission, to unite our people, man. Even we in Africa right now, but also, we trying to link in with our brothers and sisters with the diaspora all around the world, even in Puerto Rico. So I want to hit you out with this question, man. And then after that, we're gonna get it cracking a little more. So can you explain to the people, 3 historical significant facts, points, that highlights the Hebrew Israelite culture that's in Puerto Rico. Can you let the people know and elaborate on it, my brother?
Well, I would definitely elaborate on some historical significant points, right? When it comes to the Israelite presence in Puerto Rico, it's interesting, right? Because it really stems back to Second Esdras chapter 13, right? Where we see that, the inhabitants of Judea left and were seeking a land where mankind never dwelt, right? So this is also an idea shared by Christopher Columbus in his book of prophecies, where he discusses that, hey, man, we got to get to the Indies. And, we really think that the lost tribes are in these islands or, in India. So Christopher Columbus lands in Puerto Rico, brings Luis de Torres with him, a Hebrew interpreter, to speak with the inhabitants that they found. Moving forward, that's what, 1493. And you got to remember, during this period of time, there was also Jews in Spain and in Portugal already living there that were also brought from West Africa. So there was already, what people like to term Black Jews, but in reality, they're just Jews. You know what I'm saying? They're just they're the people of Yah, the children of Israel. Nevertheless, Christopher Columbus came down here with some freed uh, Black slaves that were oppressed in Spain. So by 1501, 1502, depending on the historians you ask, we also have the presence of Africans in Puerto Rico, from West Africa, from Ghana, uh, Senegal, man, you name it, all over West Africa, wherever the Portuguese went and the Spanish went to grab, what they considered their economic commodity, right? Horrible. But with that, they also brought their culture. So one of the historical facts about Puerto Rico makes it really interesting is that we also have a style of music called bomba, which is inspired from the African tunes that were used in Western Africa. You got the congas, you got the large drums, where these were musical developments that allowed these people to send messages, do their spirituals, similar things we see of the Africans that were brought to the Americas, North America to be exact. So by the early 1500s, you had millions, hundreds of thousands of North Africans, West Africans being brought to Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic, and Brazil. Now, this is about, a century before the transatlantic slave trade. And, it's important to realize that, all sorts of people were being brought to this side of the world, for many reasons. One of those is, the Spaniards had, decimated the Aboriginal population on the island. And they brought reinforcements, from Africa to continue their sugarcane plantations and continue their abuses. Let's see what else. We also have many illustrious Black leaders in Puerto Rico. One of them being Dr. Arturo Alfonso Schomburg. Now this is, early 19th century, late 18th century. So we see these things. We learn also culinary, and we have a culinary inheritance. Fufu, we have a plate that's inspired. It's called mofongo, which is also an African word. So, from music to illustrious men and women and also food, we have a lot of Israelite inheritance that came through this diaspora, right? This forced also conversion that we see prior to Black slaves and freed Black people arrive in Puerto Rico. So those are the three I like to highlight in history and how it's influenced, people here on the island. But also modernly, we have the archaeological discovery of the Padre Nazario stones, where, it's been determined. I don't know if you've followed that history. I remember we spoke about it early on when we first met. About a year ago, the curator had a specialist epigraphist look at the stones and determined it was Punic. And I kind of smiled because, the Punic is no less than the Phoenician script. What we realize is a Paleo-Hebrew. These were actually also taken to Haifa, to Israel. They said, no, it's not Hebrew. It looks like Hebrew, but it's not Hebrew. but later to find out it's a Phoenician script, which, I kind of smile because I have Gesenius's Hebrew lexicon and grammar here. And I looked at the stones because I personally held these stones myself back in 2017. So I compared the writing on them, and I saw some similarities there as well. But I'm not an expert in what these things are. I find these things quite interesting. So we have archaeological finds, we have cultural ties in music, food, and we have illustrious Black leaders here in Puerto Rico.
Yeah, definitely, man. That's interesting. I know, that our people, we love beans and rice, no matter what. I know that for a fact. We love beans and rice. Now what you're saying is very interesting, bro. You bringing out some very interesting information, man. And I'm very, just blessed to be able to, to be on this podcast with you, bro. Now, before we jump into the other question, let me ask you this about the DNA thing. You know what I'm saying? Because I did my DNA, and my DNA, I have a lot of, like, at least 80%, almost 90% of my DNA is in sub-Saharan Africa. And me and you, we was conversating about it, and you had mentioned about your DNA. And you was like, you have DNA, African ancestry in your DNA. Can you explain to the people, the further, solidify what you were just talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of people are aware that during the conquest of Puerto Rico, by Spain, you got the Europeans out here, but you also had people already here. There's a lot of history that shows that people from Holland, Italy, even the English were here. So with that brings a lot of mixture of cultures. When we start seeing reportings of like slaves, it's not really until, like I said, the early 1500s, 1501, 1502, depends who you ask. So with that comes, slave owners, freed people as well, because there was a time in Spain where they could be free, they can buy their freedom. But in reference to your question about my DNA, like, I was surprised, that I found Nigeria, Cameroon, Mali, Central West Africa, Senegal, Northern Africa, Ivory Coast, Ghana, Western Bantus people. I even have ties to the Levant directly through my DNA. And many Puerto Ricans on the island have that, because, again, how I started this off, the Spanish Inquisition took over, what was known as Sepharad, the whole Iberian Peninsula. Catholicism rose again through, the king and queen. And with that came forced conversions. But that didn't mean that these new Christians, as they called them, were emphatically just European. That's just inconsistent historically. We have evidence that there were Black Jews in Portugal. We have evidence there were Black Jews in Spain. And this ideal of race wasn't really a central piece of what identified the society, right? This came with Christianity. We see that racism is elevated, and where they themselves say that the Black race are accursed people. They're less than human. We see this through their ideals, the way they treated them, and they treated our families, our ancestors, So that brings also another part of the coin to this mix. It's not really so cut and dry when you start looking at these things, openly, right? Because we all come to this message and to this truth through different walks of life, and that's all right, but we see that being possible because the spirit of Yah is moving, right? He's waking up his children. He's fulfilling his promises he gave to Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. So we see these things, through also the Arab slave trade. We can't dismiss these things and how our people have been scattered through all the world as the Most High God of Israel prophesied and told us and warned us that these things would happen. So it's really eye-opening when you really start digesting this information, right? Because it allows us to really have empathy towards others and also start healing within ourselves. Because the law of the Almighty, it restores, right? It builds up, and it makes the unwise wise. So if we're truly seeking Elohim and spirit and truth, we have to be open to everyone's story and see where they're coming from. We can't just box in the children of Israel in one box when the Most High said they're in the four corners of the earth. So, and how they got there, how we got here is, through different captivities, escapes, because we have also historical evidence that the Jews went to the Ottoman Empire, Northern Africa. You know, we also have prehistory of like the Solomonic dynasty that's continued in Ethiopia. You know, we also have information on how what is his name? Mansa Musa, who said his predecessor came to the Americas in like the late 1400s, like 1390 something, right? I may be off on the date.
Yeah.
So there is already people of color in this region. That more likely than not, there are people because Solomon did trade, right, with Hiram, and they trade with the Phoenicians as well. I mean, we have this in the stories of the kings. So we know for a fact that, you know, our people was like, yo, where you going? Hey, I'm gonna go with you. Let's go. And that's just how it goes, man. The scriptures tell us it takes one man to replenish a city. You know, through intermarriage and stuff, we're gonna see a lot of different faces, a lot of different colors. But what matters is the spirit we're walking with, man. You know,
right on, bro. Right on.
So,
and you know, now go ahead, finish what you're about to say.
no, so
Everything.
that's the beauty of all this, man. That like those are the things that highlight our history. You know, at least in Puerto Rico, I can, you know, I can't speak for the other places because I'm not from there, but I have visited places like the DR and in Santiago where I've seen statues of freed African slaves, African leaders. You know what I'm saying? And you know, we have many different people around the world reclaiming their inheritance as the children of Israel, regardless if they call themselves Hebrew Israelites, Jews, whatever they want to call themselves. But we still have, we're starting to see a grow in that. And it's interesting, man, to see this come alive and come to fruition. You know, we understand that even the book of the Judges tells us that every man did according to what they saw fit before their eyes. What does that mean? You know what I'm saying? Everybody had different customs, different ideas, different ways to serve the Almighty, but we had central core beliefs, you know, but how they carried it out, you know, it varied. You know, and every a real scholar in, you know, Second Temple period, and you know, there's very little about the First Temple, if at all, but they'll all agree like, hey, yeah, this region practice like this region practice like that. You know, we even have the, you know, in the New Testament how we see the disciples keeping Passover a day before. So there's just, you know, these things that we see, these nuances that we are able to appreciate once we, you know, we start looking at the text fully and we start seeing, you know, confirmation throughout history. So
Yeah.
that's all I want to say, man. Appreciate it.
No, definitely, man, definitely. And to segue into, you know, the next this question, and I want, you know, everybody participation with this. After I ask this question, we're gonna look at a video, a real quick, be like a 1 minute video, and then I want everybody, you know, aspect on this. I want everybody take on this, and with that, we're gonna go into a couple of books also, and I want people feedback because we're gonna shine some light, you know, on the 10 lost tribes of Israel. We're gonna shine some light on the migration. We're gonna shine some light on you know, on the African origin of these people, you know, and what they want to call the indigenous people over there in the Americas. We're gonna shine the light on the connection on this, because if we can, we in the times of Zephaniah chapter 2. We in the times of that, and we're gonna fulfill it. We're gonna fulfill it. We're gonna fulfill it, and our children gonna fulfill it, and our children's children gonna fulfill it. And it starts with things what we're doing now, setting these foundations. So now, the segue into this question, man. The question, I'll put the question out there. We're gonna check out this video real quick. Now, is Africa itself? Mainly when I speak about Africa, I mean Africa in general, because Israel is in Africa. Israel is in Northeast Africa. All right, it's connected to the African tectonic plate, to the continent plate, to the continent, the continent Africa. Israel is connected to that. You can it's a border from Egypt to Israel. You can cross. Okay, Israel is in Africa. All right, so Northeast Africa. But with that being said, is Africa the home origin of these indigenous tribes of the Americas? All right, and if so, how and when did they migrate here? We're going to go into some information about this. So now, what we're going to do is, let me share my screen. Let's do it. Let's do it. Let me know if y'all can hear it. Can y'all hear this?
that are not comfortable for white people. They're not comfortable.
Make sure you know. Yeah, I hear.
That are not comfortable for white people. They're not comfortable for them to talk about the possibility that Africans were here.
Make sure you know your history.
That are not comfortable for white people. They're not comfortable for them to talk about the possibility that Africans were here before the Europeans. So what do you do with the heads in Mexico that you find at San Lorenzo, at Tres Zapotes? What do you do with those? All right? You ignore them. What do you do with Columbus's diary that says the Africans know a way to the west, but it goes around the doldrums, we would never survive? What do you do with that? You ignore it. What do you do with Balboa's diary that says we came upon this African village in the isthmus? How did these Africans get here? What do you do with that? You ignore it. Why? To preserve the myth that the Europeans were here first. What do you do with all of this written literature and history that says that Abubakar II of Mali sent 200 ships to the west? One came back and said they were afraid that the others disappeared. And then to have Balboa find this village that looks just like Mali, where he was, what do you do with this information? You ignore it. You ignore it. Why? To preserve the myth of white superiority. That's
All right. So now, like, what do they do with all this information that's out there? There's all and then the information, the historical information that's been hidden. We're gonna talk about this stuff. All right, we're gonna talk about this. So I want to give people feedback before because I'm gonna dive into a couple of these books and everything, and I want people to feedback. This is a book I got. Let me know if y'all can see it. There we go. Christopher Columbus, African Holocaust. We're gonna read some excerpts out of here, written by John Henrik. Okay, John Henrik Clark. All right, a scholar, a Black scholar. Okay, we're gonna read. We're gonna go on some information about it. So, anybody want to say anything before I dive into these books real quick? If not, I'm gonna dive. I'm about to dive into. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna read an excerpt about it. This is page 67 through 68. I'm gonna read this, and it starts off like this. Now, the following comment is taken from a speech. It's time we rethink our history. So it's time that we rethink our history, brothers and sisters. It's time that we rethink things, all right? And it's time that we start putting autonomy, start taking the right steps to put autonomy back into our hands, all right? No matter where we at. If we in Puerto Rico, we in Mexico, we in Africa, we need to start uniting a specific way and rethinking our history. All right, so I'm gonna go into it. And this is from a book from a he's a scholar. His name is David R. Stidden. At the first celebration of African American culture and history at Stanford High, Nashville, Tennessee, he published this around March 1990. And it starts like this. It reads, when we begin to rethink our history, we understand why history books were wrong. We were all miseducated. Columbus did not discover America. The historical facts in December 1492, Columbus was totally lost, wandering around the Caribbean islands, thinking he was in Asia. When he was discovered by the native Awak, the Awak, now if you say American Indians, who lived in these islands. Actually, it was the Arawak ancestors who 50,000 years before Columbus discovered the Americans. When they walk across the land, bridging in the Bering Strait, we're gonna talk about that. Columbus didn't discover anything. He was so confused and lost. He thought he was in India and called the Arawak Indians. Christopher Columbus was considered a saint by the Europeans who held him great so-called discovery. We need to rethink our history. Columbus was no saint, And the Arawak were not uncivilized savages like the Africans who came to America before and after Columbus. Those were gentle people. So this author, he's saying he had Africans that came to America before and after Columbus, and these people were gentle people, all right, with a rich culture who worshiped the one creator. When we begin to rethink our history, we begin to put into historical perspective the true role of Europeans in our 500-year history. The prosperity, the wealth, the good European lifestyle we enjoy today in America began in 1492. And from its infinite beginnings, the prosperity grew out of slavery. You see, slavery did not begin with the importation of African people to America. Slavery in America began with Christopher Columbus. The first slaves were not Africans, but Native Americans. All right. Now, this is important right here. Columbus wrote in his journals about the inhabitants of Haiti. All the inhabitants could be taken away to Spain and made slaves on the island with 50 men. We would subjugate them and make them do whatever we want. In truth, that is exactly what he did. Columbus enslaved the gentle Arawak Haitian Indians, okay, forced them to give up their gold and their land after all, and he discovered their riches and that they were for him for the taking. What is also true is Columbus took hundreds of Arawak slaves to Spain, where they were sold or died. They didn't freely go with Columbus to meet the king, as many history books led us to believe. In this quest for gold, Columbus had their hands cut off of many Arawak natives and for not bringing in his quarter of gold. And in a short 40 years, an entire race of people in Haiti, 500,000 Native Americans were wiped off the face of the earth by Columbus and the Spaniards that followed him. No, Columbus was no saint. We need to rethink our history. All right, so now, according to what I just read, we understand that the Africans that came later on on the slave ships wasn't the first slaves. It was the indigenous people who shared the same African origin as the Africans that came on the slave ships. All right, so that's very, very important to understand that. Anybody want to chime in? Anything, real quick? Anybody?
Hey, I had to step away from the computer. I mean, from the phone real quick, but what was the last question that is?
Well, the question is, it's about the indigenous people, the indigenous families, the indigenous tribes over there in the Americas. Are their ancestors, are their home origin of the indigenous tribes of America, are their home origin is Africa? Is that Africa? And if so, how did they get over to the Americas and when did this happen? So I'm just going into some history now out of this book, Christopher Columbus and the African Holocaust. All right, now let me read this other thing real quick. Now, matter of fact, let me just wrap this part of this book up real quick. So this is on page 77. All right, and it said the forced migration. So the process of a capture and transport was set in motion by the slave trade that changed maritime history, economic history, and created an immigration population in the Caribbean islands and in the Americas who were forced out of their homes against their will. The basis of this force was the need of greed of Europe. Their forced migration was a process that ignored the humanity of a large portion of humankind. This process set in motion during the later part of the 15th century would last over 300 years until slavery was turned into colonization and more sophisticated form of slavery. All right, so, and I want to read it, said across the Atlantic to the various ports when they were to be sold as slaves around those areas, around the Caribbean areas, is the most tragic story of forced immigration in human history. So you got Africans who came over there, you know, and they pretty much became indigenous, and then you got Africans who came over there later as slaves, you know. So really, like, the indigenous people and those African people are pretty much they're the same people. These Caribbean people, these natives people, these native tribes, you know, all of these people they are the same, essentially the same people. All right. Now, what's interesting is, like, now I'm about to read something, right? Because now this is what I'm talking about, like we the ones who taught the Spaniards to go to. We knew about the Americas, the Africans. We knew we had people over there. We knew that already. We was the first explorers. We went over there. We was like, look, we know it's some land that over there. We know. We can show y'all. We can show. Matter of fact, we got it's family. We got our family over there in these parts. We've been traveling over there since the 8th century BCE, or probably even before that. All right. Now I'm gonna read this. Now this is page 81 in the same book. All right, and it say the slave trade in the New World. The Africans were no strangers to the New World. They seem to have been in North America and South America long before Columbus. This is more than an assumption, thanks to the research of Professor Leo Weiner, reported in his writing Africa and the Discovery of America, and the work of Arnold G. Lawrence in another book called African Explorers to the New World. The first Africans who came to the New World were not by bondage, contrary to what popular belief. Africans participated in some early expeditions, mainly with Spanish explorers. The best known of these African explorers was somebody named Esteban Niso. I'm saying it wrong. Sometimes known as Little Stephen, who accompanied the De Vaca expedition during 6 years of wandering from Florida to Mexico. The remarkable thing about Little Stephen, who came to America in 1527, is that he was a remarkable linguistic. He learned the language of the Indians in a matter of weeks. Because of his knowledge of herbs and medicine, he was accepted as a deity by some of the Indian tribes. All right, so now this is just many of one explorers. All right, that I'm gonna read this saying an exploration of Guatemala and Chile and Peru and Venezuela, Africans arrived nearly 100 years before they reappeared as slaves in Jamestown, Virginia in 1619. So a lot of these explorers, some of the Spaniards, the reason why they was even able to know where to go was because it was Africans telling them, because they've been there, they knew about these places, they already knew about this stuff. All right. But this is an interesting book. All right, I would say that. So now I'm gonna open it up for any anybody want to say anything about this.
That last year you said it was like the 1600s or something like that, right?
Yeah, but yeah, right.
With the last. Well, there was an explorer that came in the 1300s, if I'm not mistaken, named Abu Baker II, I believe. If I'm not mistaken, he was like a ruler in Mali before Mansa Musa. And he sailed, if I'm not mistaken, like 1312, 1311 or something. When Christopher Columbus supposedly did, it was like 14.
Yeah, exactly.
I was listening when you was reading that, and they were talking about Africans had lots of knowledge of the Western world is because they've been coming back and forth. They've been had ways of transportation. And then another reference to this is, if y'all remember the movie Apocalypto, it was showing, like, if I'm not mistaken, that was like the Tainos and stuff like that are already here, and them ships was out there in the water at the end coming in, and they looking like, who is these people coming up on the soil? Let's duck in these bushes. They don't look right. But yeah, it was like you say, it was already there was already people here. So yeah, that gives reference to why the Africans had a little knowledge of that side of the world, though, is because there was already travelers coming back and forth. You know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's all I got.
No, right on, no, right on. We've been traveling the world. The earth is our turf. We've been traveling.
I wanted to get something out of Hebraisms of West Africa too, real quick. Just showing the Israelite presence in Africa, which eventually would have led to them being exiled even farther by, you know, some of the people that was, you know, pretty much filling up the slave ships and bringing them to the Americas. Like, one thing most Israelites acknowledge is the Southern Kingdom, you know what I'm saying, going into slavery. But a lot of times we don't, or they don't acknowledge the Northern Kingdom dealing with the same plight as the Southern Kingdom going into slavery, or, you know what I'm saying, being brought from the Americas to Africa, or from the Americas to European countries. But this is about the Dominicans, right? It says the massacre of the Jews at, oh, hold up, this is page 240 in Hebraisms of West Africa. The massacre of the Jews at Tuat took place in 1492, the very year that the Moors were driven out of Granada. Granada is in Spain. The Moors right there is particularly talking about the Israelites in this case, as we continue to read. It says, in the previous influence of this Jewish people, it says, especially in the north of Africa, may explain the reason why the Dominicans, when they undertook mission work in Africa in the 13th century, required of their missionaries a knowledge of Hebrew as well as Arabic. So they was using Dominican missionaries to give them knowledge of Hebrew, pretty much. Or should I say, better yet, the missionaries, which were Europeans, they were receiving lessons on Hebrew. That way they could communicate with the people in North Africa in the 13th century. So that shows the presence of Israelites in the 13th century as well. And not only that, but another thing is Queen Dido. Her father, she was related to King Hiram. You could read about in the Book of Kings and Chronicles. That's the one, he was a friend of David, and he helped Solomon with the resources for the temple. She was related to him, so she was a Danite. But even inside this book, it tells you that she took people from, if I'm not mistaken, the tribe of Zebulun and I think the tribe of Asher, and she went and started a colony in the land of Carthage, which is in like modern day Tunisia, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, so our people always been migrating to the west, to the east as well, but to the west. And then eventually, you know what I'm saying, they made their ways to the Americas as well. Y'all ever heard the legend of Turtle Island?
Nah, tell the people about it.
No, so basically, Turtle Island, some people say it's a myth, some people say it's real, and for those who believe it's real, they say it's America. If you look at America and you look at Florida, Florida almost looked like it almost looked like a turtle, for lack of better words, flap. It's not an arm, a turtle flap. And then they say the part, you know, like going farther towards the east, once you get to like Maine and stuff like that, that would be the head. So they say America is shaped like a turtle. And pretty much you had people who wrote about this big island that was far away, and they called it Turtle Island. And it's believed that that is the modern day Americas, and that pretty much that's where like the Northern Kingdom went at, and that's where, you know, a lot of the quote unquote so-called Indian tribes reside at, which was Turtle Island.
Right on. That's interesting, man. Very interesting. Now what we about to do? I'm because in that question, because that specific question, it's a lot of things in detail in that question, you know. So I'm gonna bring out this another book. All right, this is called the 10 Tribes of Israel. 10 Tribes of Israel. There you go. The 10 Tribes of Israel. And it's written by Timothy R. Jenkins. All right. Now, I find this information interesting. So it says this in here. It say, now the following is taken from the Apocrypha. This is from the Apocrypha, 2nd Ezra, chapter 13, verse 40 to 45. And it said, to show when the 10 tribes left the eastern country to come to a land not inhabited by man. These are the 10 tribes which are carried away prisoner of their own land in the time of Osea the king, who Salmanassar, the king of Assyria, led away captive, and he carried them over the waters, and so came they into another land. Now, for those who don't know about the Apocrypha is a it's, what is it, like 16 books? What is it, 20? What, how many books it is? Like 20 books, 22 books taken out of the King James Version Bible. I have a King James Version 1611, and the Apocrypha is inside there. But around the late 1800s, early 1900s, the Roman Catholic Church and the Protestants, they took it out. They took it out. They took those books out. Now, in those books, you have Second Ezra chapter 13, and is reading what it's talking about. I'm gonna keep going. So it's saying, these are the 10 tribes was carried away prisoners out of their own land in the time of Hosea the king, who Salmanassar, the king of Assyria, led away captive. And he carried them over the waters, and so came they into another land. But they took counsel among themselves that they would leave the multitude of the heathen and go forth into a further country where never no mankind dwelt. For thou that country there was a great way to go, namely of a year and a half. And the same region is called Azareth. Now, what are we to learn from the foreign history? For the foregoing history. First, we are taught that they understood the geography of the country and the distance that they may travel in order to get to the land where no mankind dwelt. And second, that there were no country in the east, but were more or less inhabited by man. So they knew about Africa. They knew about Europe. They knew about these places, because they had frequent people coming from, these places to Israel and things like that. They knew about certain areas. So this author is saying, consequently, America was the only country at that time not known to certain mankind. So now, these people left Israel around the Assyrian time when the Assyrians took over Israel. That's around the 8th century BC, around 720 BCE. They left. They made their way through Africa. They went to parts of Asia. And they finally made their way to the Americas. So this is some of the plight of the migration. And then on top of that, after that, and before that, Africans, was already aware of something of another place already. That's why when you get to like the 1300s AD, when you get to the 13th century, the 14th century AD, you see, these African explorers going to these different places, going to the Americas, because we knew about it already. So now I'm gonna read this. I'm gonna read this right here. And I'm gonna read something from the scholars in this book. Now they said the following is from J.J. Morbit's History of Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, on page 68. Being an extract from a letter written by William Penn to the Committee of Free Society of Traders in London, England in 1683. So this is going back to 1683. He states of the origin of the North American Indian, I'm ready to believe them of the Jewish race. I mean, of the stock of the 10 tribes, and that from the following reasons. First, they were to go to the land not planted or known, which to be sure Asia and Africa were, if not Europe, and he that attended the extraordinary judgment upon them might make the passions not uneasy to them. And it is not impossible in itself from the easternmost parts of Asia to the westernmost parts of America. In the next place, I find them of a like countenance, and that their children are of so lively resemblance that a man who think of himself as a Duke place, like royalty, or Berry Street, London, when he seen them. But this is not all. They agree in rites. They reckon by moons. They offer their first fruits. They have a kind of feast of tabernacles. They are said to lay their altar upon 12 stones. They're mourning a year customs of a woman with many other things that that not now occur. So this traveler and this he actually historian, he's writing in the late 1600s saying these Native American Indians, they keeping the feast called Feast of Tabernacles. They keeping they following they keeping the new moon, the months. They was so you seeing these things, and there's more information within this book. For the sake of time, I'm not going to read all the information, but just that alone right there, letting you know that you have, it's a lot of connections with these indigenous tribes that's in the Americas. All right, it's a lot of connection. All right, now it's a lot of information I got, but let's go to the next question. If anybody want to chime in before we slide on to the next question, anybody can go ahead and do their thing. Now let's check out this next question. This is, what effect and change will the world have if Hebrew Israelites around the world unite underneath a common goal and start creating our own government structure? We got Brother Victor, he in Puerto Rico. If we can start mobilizing and strategizing and executing these things, we can have these different institutions and these different establishments amongst Hebrew Israelites, and showing that governmental, structure is being shown. It's being shown, not with us being our different communities and not dealing with each other. We actually have our different communities, but deal with each other together as a government and still have our different communities. Just imagine how beautiful that would be, not just in Africa, but around the world where we know where the Hebrews are at. Can y'all elaborate on that? How powerful would that be if we can do that just globally? All right, globally, not just in specific countries, but globally.
I'm gonna chime in real quick if you don't mind.
Yeah, do your thing.
I think it would be significant. We would definitely have like a cultural renaissance amongst ourselves. We will come to a real deep understanding of who we are instead of allowing others to tell our story. This is the moment, this is the time that Yah's allowing us to tell the world our story. We're the ones here that have been here for a while, have experienced these things. You're not allowed to speak about these things because you didn't undergo them. Now it's time for us to tell our stories, tell how these things have affected us, right? So we'll have a cultural renaissance. We'll have political sovereignty and representation. This idea of unity also needs to, have a realistic position where that we're still in these confines of these nations. But within the nations, we can govern ourselves. I mean, we see this with the Native American tribes that they have their own reservations. There's certain ways to legally declare yourself kind of, have a certain status with the government, right? Where they have to recognize certain things. If we can find connection to the lands that predate their arrival, they're going to have to, consider us and consider what we're bringing forward. We'll also have economic liberation. Think about a community of people farming together, making, clothes, whatever it is we need, homes, everything, but you keep that economy within the people. You don't put money out. All the money circles around, keeps circling around until you have a society that's, socially, economically independent from the mainstream economic system. Now, how that will play out, that's definitely something that I consider something more prophetic, that it will come to existence because it was spoken by our prophets. How it comes to existence now, it's on us. We have to work towards it and really tear down these walls that we've put up for various reasons and really bring together that love and that unity of what it means to be the children of Israel, not the northern kingdom, not the southern kingdom, because remember that idea happened under Rehoboam. So before that, through the Davidic kingdom, we were one nation. So we have to come back to that kingdom mindset and really let go of a lot of things. And it takes time. We each come from different walks of life and different experiences. Now, so long as we're willing to grow, this can be possible. And like you said, it's not border driven, it's borderless. Wherever you're at, hey, you have an emergency in Kenya. Hey, this happened. Can you help me? Absolutely, man. Hey, may it be bread, may it be clothes, may it be money, whatever it takes to put the brother, the family, the sister back on their feet. Hey, that's where it's at. Regardless
And
of
that's
regardless of what
right.
it is, we're supposed to uplift one another. That's definitely the core message behind love thy neighbor as thyself. You know, but
Nah,
that
right
that's what
on,
I
bro.
what I think would occur. A cultural renaissance will have a political sovereignty, and most definitely will have a social economic system where our children will no longer be struggling through these mechanisms that these governments has set in place for us. Instead of allowing them to dictate terms, we can use their terms, we can use their rules to benefit our society and our group of people, and it's possible. You see people do it all the time. Just real quick, we see that we have an example of that with Ashkenazi Jews in America. We see that, there's no plight against them. It's not hate against them, but we see that whatever they got going on, they know how to do it. They've been doing it for years. Now it's our time to look at all these systems and see how we can implement our own mechanisms to help each other out. Because it's in a competition, man. The kingdom of heaven is within all of us. We just got to walk it out now.
No, right on, man. And something you said about the Native American Indians, we got to take models from them. How they, they got, somewhat of their sovereignty, by taking certain steps, by being recognized as a nation. We take certain models like that. We take those models and then we implement those things, and unite with our brothers, with the Native American Indians, because we have a similar plight, a similar plight as them. They are our people, and that's why it's important that we have this conversation. It's important that we exchange, we exchange words with these things so we can, so because words are powerful. Words are powerful. It's not just talk. These things will come into existence. So yeah, I mean, this can be something done globally. This is how we be able to take back our identity, take back our give ourselves autonomy. This is how we'll be able to won't suffer for identity crisis no more. We won't suffer for these things no more when we start actually taking those steps, and doing it. With anybody else want to chime in with that? You know what I'm saying? Like how significant would that be, if we can actually pull this thing off globally,
Right.
globally,
That's why I'm here, bro. The question is, what effect will that have on the world, right? And I think
Yeah.
the effect would be significant. And it brings further understanding to the scripture that say Esau is the end of the world and Jacob is the beginning of it that follows. And why is that? Because this whole construct, everything that we see, the whole design of what we see going on in the world right now was created by a people. And that people would be Esau, right? They the end of the world, right? And Jacob will be the beginning of it that follows. That's why it's so much of a threat for us to actually come together. Can you imagine a people numbered as the sand of the sea throughout the whole earth coming together with all of the understanding that we have in all of our areas that we in? Can you imagine that? Can you imagine the global shift? Right? You think this financial battle with tariffs and stuff like that is something that Trump got going on. You think that's something. Imagine when we come together and pull ourselves out of that system and begin to create our own based off of the way it was supposed to be originally. Then what happens? Of course, we're going to have spiritual intervention because all nations is going to boot up and come after us. That's what it's going to be. That's exactly what it's going to be. And see, our gathering together, our coming together, ushers in our Lord and Savior. That brings in a new day. But it's up to us, like the brother said earlier, the kingdom is within us. It's up to us. We got to listen, all these barriers, and we just talked about this last night on our podcast. All these barriers that we got between us, All of these things that we got, these walls we got up, right? These leaders who we got in place who don't mean us no good. You know, we got to get all these things out the way. We got to get them all out the way, man, because this has to be done. This has to be done. See, everybody's sitting back and they waiting. Oh, we got to wait on the Savior. We got to wait on. You ain't got to wait on nothing. You got to boot up and get out here and do it yourself. Because I'm a father. I'm a father and I got boys, young men. And if I don't see them men working towards helping themselves, I ain't helping them. And the Father ain't going to help us if we don't first begin to try to help ourselves and gather together. And that's the effect I think it'll have on the world. I think it'll be significant. I think it changes everything. I think we will actually, hey, I know we're going to be that nation that, you know, that's what we're going to be. So
be that nation that's not desired. You know, we that's we walk in scriptures. And that's why, you know, bringing the book to life. And what you saying, bro, you saying some nuggets, man, you know what I'm saying? And I hope the people that's listening can absorb this stuff in, absorb the energy that we're trying to let out in the world, absorb that, you know, understand that this is real. This is real. All right, this is not a game. We're not taking our time out to do this to be done. This is not a game. This is not a game. You know, we put time into this. We're taking risks with this. This is not a game to us. This is real, because we know whatever we want to happen, we can make it happen, especially if we know God is on our side, you know, with this. So I mean, anybody want to chime in on that, man? What effect would it have on the world? You know, this world, this world out here.
I think one of the most significant effects that it will have is that the world will see that Ezekiel 37:10 taking place, which is that exceedingly great army. Our people coming together as one, doing what we're supposed to do, starting with loving, having integrity. That's another thing we was talking about on our podcast last night. Loving and having integrity towards one another. But the main thing I think that it will be is that that we will be that exceedingly great army. Because back in the States, it was one thing that I always noticed that a lot of our Brew brothers and sisters used to always talk about was they fear us, but they don't, because we can't come together. There's some type of restraints on that. There's no love amongst us. Once we start coming together and gathering and being that nation that we're supposed to be, then that would affect the world in a good way. Like I say, that love is key, that love. Christ said something in oh shoot, I forgot. I just had it on the tip of my head. But he was talking to somebody and he basically was telling him on Mark 12. And Mark 12, he was talking to somebody and they was basically asking him, what is the greatest commandment? What should we do? Blah, blah, blah. He was telling them, "Hear, O Lord, the Most High God is one." And then right after that, love thy neighbor as thyself. And then when you scroll down, the dude had mumbled something under his breath, and Christ told him, "You're not far from the kingdom," because he acknowledged the truth and love. So I think that's how we can affect the world, is by loving each other and caring for one another. No, that's what I got.
All right on, man. Right on. Once the children of Israel start showing that love, and the best way to show that love is coming together. You know, we don't all have to believe in the same thing. We don't all have to, we don't all have to do that. You grow up in the house with a bunch of brothers and sisters. Everybody not gonna agree with everything, but you have that love for each other that keeps y'all together, that keeps the family together. And that's us creating this governmental construct. That's what we showing within each other. We showing that love that we have within each other as a family. That's what we are. We are family, and we have, at the end of the day, we have the same enemy. You know what I'm saying? So let's come together, family. You know what I'm saying? Let's do that. And powerful words, man. I borrow powerful words. Let's matter of fact, while we talking about that, I'm gonna go ahead and ask this, and do we have to change our understanding of our messianic expectation? You know, our expectation of what a Messiah is supposed to, of our, you know, like when it comes to our expectation, like what we supposed to be doing while, you know, we're waiting on a Messiah or something like do we, you know, do we have to adjust our messianic expectation, you know, for us to succeed
Oh,
in this?
Shalom. Can y'all hear me?
Yeah. Yeah. We can hear you, bro. You can go ahead.
No. I didn't mean my screen froze. I thought that might have been something going on. Stream, my fault.
No doubt. Now you good. You good. So yeah, do we have to change our expectation of the Messiah? You know, of what we perceive. You know, the Messiah. Because a lot of us, you know, in that quote unquote Hebrew Israelite understanding, you know, that a lot of brothers and sisters in the States have, that we should just wait around. We gotta wait around, wait. We wait. You know, but the kingdom, like we said earlier, the kingdom is within us. If the kingdom is within us, what are we waiting for? What are we waiting for? The kingdom is near. The kingdom is here. The kingdom, we are the builders. We are the builders of the temple. We are the, if we the builders, then then if the more we keep waiting, then the word is gonna keep being what the word be, and we're gonna just keep complaining. So, you know, do we have to change our messianic expectation? And Brother Victor, you can go ahead, bro. You can go ahead and speak to him, my Puerto Rican brother.
No, you know, it's interesting. It's true. You know, like I first started speaking earlier. You know, um, everyone had a different expectation. You know, this is why we see different factions, even within the biblical narrative. You know, different people saw things differently. But we had one core belief, meaning we all believed in the Almighty because that was a God of Abraham, the God of Yitzchak, and the God of Yaakov. You know, how prophecy, you know, developed and it expressed itself, you know, different people saw it differently. You know, we see this also with the New Testament, with the Gospels of the different of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. You know, in the Book of Acts, you know, we see different messianic expectations, and each person has the right to decide if whoever they deem to be that person is that person. You know why? And like Peter says, all we got to do is defend it in meekness and in love. You know, this is why I believe, for instance, Yehoshua HaMashiach, or you know, the many names people call him by, is the Messiah, or why he's not the Messiah. You know, because there's many arguments against him as well. So but what should be our foundation, right? And I say should lightly because again, everyone has an independent perspective on how they see the scriptures, but we have to use the foundation of these things, right? Because the expectations of a Messiah are echoed through Genesis up until you know the last prophets of the Tanakh. If you're Tanakh only, but if not, if you go to the Bezorah, you go to Revelations, you see who that person was understood to be. So who he is, is expecting what. You know, the teacher of righteousness, right, taught us that we should just be doing what we were called to do and be ready at all times. You know, we don't sit back and wait with our hands in our pockets. I think that ideology really stems from a lot of trauma from enslavement because we understand that what is coined, right, Christianity really started in Jerusalem. You know, it didn't start with the Europeans. The Europeans heard it from the natives, from the land. You know, we have evidence that Shaul went to different places. The apostles went to different places. Man, in Africa, you know, in Africa, in India, there's evidence that Barnabas went to India. You know, and in Persia, the different apostles went into these lands. So, you know, it's just interesting that once we see the rise of Christianity, this hands in your pocket ideology starts coming in. You know, it's never meant for you to just be relaxed and wait on somebody to save you. You're supposed to do the best you can with the rules you were given amongst that framework that God placed over you as a man. Because he didn't tell Adam, hey man, sit down here, just chill, enjoy it from these fruits and these trees. No, he told Adam to work, you know? So work is not a bad thing. And work can come in many different ways. This is what I said earlier. We have to really, when we develop this idea of social living, social community across, the whole face of the earth, that comes with great importance, right? Because we know that the ancient past set up elders, set up judges, set up groups and leaders because we need that. You can't just be aimlessly out there just governing yourself just without no accountability. No, bro, you can't do that. That leads to a lot of issues in itself. And we see that again in the time of the judges. This is why the Almighty had to raise one judge to bring the people right back to him. What was he doing? He was shepherding. So we need to see who these shepherds are according to the heart of Yah, man, and really let the Ruach HaKodesh, guide us all, because it's going to guide us to the truthfulness of all things. And one of the biggest impacts that I see also happening with doing this and this messianic expectations is that the Torah itself will outshine everything else, and that's when real persecution will happen. And I say this because when we were in Mitzrayim, what happened? When oppression got heavy, we cried up. That's only when we started crying up to the Most High. Hey, look what they're doing to us. That He remembered, like, oh wait, that's right. They're still there. It's the same now. It's the same now. And our crying out goes what we're doing today, what we plan to do in the future, and how we treat not only ourselves, but those around us. Remember, we were called to be a light, and we were re-shown what that light is supposed to look like: meekness, humbleness. But well, the world, right? The world has this belief that those two things means a weak person. It does not. When you look at the Hebraic context of meekness, it means a strong man under constraint, that he has the ability to take your soul, but doesn't. So is humbleness. Humbleness is somebody who's just serving, knowing his position, knowing what Yah called him to do, his purpose, and walking in that purpose. And I think that regardless of who we consider the Messiah to be, or when we probably think he's going to come, or how prophecy is being fulfilled, the most important thing is one important topic we've all hit on the head, right? Love, understanding, empathy, and like the brother said, integrity. Because man, there's a lot of fake people out there in this walk saying, "Oh yeah, man, we brothers." They got a sword and a knife behind the other arm, waiting for you to turn around. And it's unfortunate, but we know even amongst the disciples, there was one that betrayed. You know what I'm saying? There was always one looking for the bag. And we gotta let those people just fade out. But they gonna fade out. I have a real close friend that tells me that, hey man, somebody can't hold up the charade the entire time. They're eventually gonna let you know who they are, because they can't keep it up. So we just gotta see it, and be it. If we want the kingdom to be here in the now, we gotta act like the kingdom in the now. We gotta really put into perspective what it means to seek the ancient paths and to walk in them, right? Because we got in Jeremiah 9 that we can get scattered everywhere. But we also know through prophetic text that in these lands, we were going to remember ourselves. And it don't matter how mixed and how not mixed we've gotten, because we all have. We're a melting pot of people now. Our spirit is calling back to the Almighty. And He's calling us back. Remember, He chose us. And He's taken us for His glory and for His purpose, whatever that may be. And I pray it's for more unity, for more love, and for the restoration of the world in peace and justice. I think I was reading Enoch. I think it was Enoch or Jubilees. All these books get messed up, man. I got a lot of books out here, but it says that they saw the men doing justice, but close to the tree of life. I was like, whoa, that's beautiful. I can't wait till we get there, because truly, we're not fighting flesh and blood here. We're fighting these evil rulers, man, that are controlled by these forces of old. They haven't gone nowhere. They're still here. They call themselves by many names. We know who they are. But guess what? We got El Elyon with us, man. Who can come against them? I dare any of them. Matter of fact, they all fear him, James told us. They know there's one, and they all tremble in his presence. So that's all I want to say, man. Regardless of who the Messiah is to certain people, we shouldn't be afraid to voice what we think and still have that empathy. If you think the brother is off, you think he's wrong, correction, love, man, and just your life should be the reflection of the Messiah you're following, right? Because that truly, like, through history, everybody who had a teacher wanted to reflect his teacher's characteristics. So let us do that. Let us reflect our teachers positive, right? Because we're all men. We're all failed. But let's focus on the good and reflect the goodness we see in whoever that person may be.
Real talk, man. Right on. I mean, let's not, like, let's not just believe in the Messiah. Let's follow what the Messiah was doing. The Messiah was working. He was working. He was building the kingdom. The kingdom. He was doing. They was doing things. So now, anybody else want to chime in on that? Like, do we have to reevaluate our messianic expectation? Because we just sitting around, not doing nothing, and a lot of these Hebrews are like camps, they got the money and the influences to do, and the manpower to do things, to have their own vegetables, their own farm, and their own schools, on a certain degree to where it's tilting the scale, Go ahead, brother Benaiah. Go ahead.
I just want to say this, man. It's a light thing that thou shouldest be my servant to raise up the tribes of Jacob. That's a light thing. That's our due diligence on this end before our Messiah, he gets here. That's what I believe. You know what I'm saying? I'm not one, and I'm not saying anybody else. If you believe like the brother just said, I'm not going to reject you. Well, if you don't believe in the Messiah, yes, I will. When I say reject, what I'm saying is it's only so much that we can do together, right? Because what I understand is that's our foundation. Our foundation is built on Christ, built on the law. And if we have an understanding of that, then we can work together to, and that's just me. You know what I'm saying? That's how I believe and see this thing, right? But it's a light thing that thou shouldest raise up, be a servant for me to raise up the tribes of Jacob. Meaning, it's up to us to do this thing, right? Like I said earlier, I'm a father, right? And if we do have a heavenly father, right, which I know we do, he want to see us operating and doing certain things before he can actually throw a life saver to us. You know what I'm saying? I'm not going to throw no lifesaver to my children. I'm not going to throw a lifesaver to my children if I see them, because I'm enabling them. If I allow them to continue to operate in the way that they are, and I keep throwing them a lifesaver, bam, I got you. I'm enabling them. They'll never change. So it's up to us. It's up to us to operate and get ourselves together. We don't want someone to enable us. We want to be able to grow. And we want to be able to understand and be like, okay, because like I said, I believe that we have to activate the spirit in the earth that's going to cause the Father to say, you know what? Go on down there and get them. Go on down there and fight for them. Go on and help them. But only until we begin to show the works and proof within ourselves, within us as a nation, right? And it starts with that love. It starts with the love. It's all about the love. That's what it's all about. It's all about the integrity, how you operate, because that's what the integrity is. The integrity is how you operate, even when ain't nobody paying attention to you. That's what it's about. And that's what it's about. That's what I believe, man. So,
all right. I mean, because people got different understanding when it comes to the Messiah. People may believe that Yeshua is, the Messiah. People may believe that somebody else is the Messiah. People may believe that the Messiah haven't came yet, whatever, So, and then we tend to take the word Messiah and look at it as a Greco-Roman way, when the word Messiah itself means anointed. So now, we're anointed people, so one thing that we do need to focus on that is doing the work of the Messiah, doing the work of the Messiah, doing the work of these other Messiahs, doing the work of that. That's what we should have in common, doing the work. Because like you said, God not gonna send us a lifeline if we not swimming. You know what I'm saying? Wait, we ain't in the water. Why he gonna do that for? We ain't even in the water. We ain't even, we ain't even establishing nothing to the point that the other nations are gonna try to drown us to where we need that life, that lifeguard yet. You know what I'm saying? So it's like the work, that's what we all have in common, no matter what our messianic expectation may be. The work is what we have in common with the Father, you know what I'm saying? And at the end of the day, we're gonna see what is what is true at the end of the, what I'm saying, eventually, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
But that
Right.
work, man, the work.
Well, I did say reject. Now I didn't mean, that's not what I meant to say.
Now,
I would not.
I understand.
No. I understand what I'm saying. Understand where I'm coming from, because that ain't that. I don't believe that's somebody moving in integrity that would reject somebody, right? Because what you can do through your works, if you truly believe what you believe, if you believe through your walk and through your works and through the way you operate, right? You may be able to get people to see exactly where you're coming from when they come to certain situations, certain situations within the word, right? So no, I wouldn't reject nobody, but I will be having my radar up, because I ain't gonna be no straight up just dissing and rejecting. You know what I'm saying? When it come to the Savior, right? When it come to Christ, for me, that's how I am. But like I said, I'm all about unity, but I'm not about, you're not gonna diss.
Yeah, if
You're not
somebody
gonna
disrespect, you got to disrespect people out there, very disrespectful people who say crazy things, and like that's why we are still learning, you know what I'm saying? And I get where you're coming from. I definitely, man. Anybody else want to chime in on that? Do we have to reevaluate our messianic expectations just so we can start coming together as a nation? And when I say reevaluate our messianic expectation, just like how we perceive it in the way that we receive it. Most of the Hebrew Israelites in America, the way that it's being received to them, it puts them in a stagnant situation, in a stagnant understanding, in a stagnant situation. And that's not even what the Messiah want, you know what I'm saying? Anyway, anybody else want to chime in on that? You gonna have Ibar. Mm-hmm.
Oh, my bad. Go ahead.
Now you can go. I go after night. You can go ahead, night.
Okay. Yeah, pretty much I was going to say we definitely have to change our expectations of, or should I say, messianic expectations. Number one, a lot of the times, well, first, let me read the scripture. I'm at, this is John 21:17, right? This is Christ talking. It says, or it's talking about Christ and Peter. It says, he said unto him the third time, Simon, son of Jonah, lovest thou me? Peter was grieved because he said unto him the third time, lovest thou me? And he said unto him, Lord, thou knowest all things. Thou knowest that I love thee. Jesus said unto him, feed my sheep. So this is something that the Messiah or Jesus or Christ emphasized. He asked him 3 times, and then he said, feed my sheep. If thou love me, feed my sheep. I think one of the things that we make a mistake of in the quote unquote truth or the Israelite movement is thinking that feeding the Most High sheep is just coming together for feast days and doing sabbatical lessons or Sabbath lessons. But also feeding the Most High sheep is also providing the necessities that they need outside of just Bible lessons. Just like Christ said, if somebody came to you hungry and said, I need something to eat, and you said, be thou full, and you sent the person away, that's not really giving them anything that's going to fulfill their appetite. So it's more than just preaching or teaching people. You also have to create institutions, create different financial opportunities, whether it be jobs for the community and things like that, to where we can actually help sustain one another as a community, right? And what I noticed is that, I like to speak on Israel because that's what I am or whatever, or that, that's why I'm into being an Israelite. So another thing is I noticed we way behind the 8 ball compared to other organizations. Like When you look at the Nation of Islam, I don't know about now, but I know back in the day they had things to help their members outside of just preaching the Quran to them or whatever book it was, you know, that they was into back then. So we definitely have to put our hands to the plow. It's more than just street preaching. It's more than just teaching. We have to create opportunities for our people to come up out of the conditions that they're in. And that's another thing. When you're able to help people come up out the conditions that they're in, that's actually doing the work also. And that's actually being fruitful also. So we definitely, once again, have to change our expectations so we could be more fruitful.
Right on, bro. Right on. Now, right on. That's real. How about you can go ahead?
Yeah. No, I was just gonna basically say just straight to the point. The kingdom comes not by observation. You know, and you said some key too, stagnant thing. Everybody when it comes to being up under these certain groups and stuff, stagnant. There'll be certain boundaries where you can't utilize your gifts and talents. So now that goes to who's that? Matthew 25, I think it is, where Christ talk about the talents. If you're not utilizing these talents and gifts that's given to you to build up this kingdom, what use are you for the kingdom? You're good as nothing. And even Christ said that. Let me read that last verse in that chapter, actually, verse 30 of Matthew 25. It said, "And cast ye the unprofitable servant into outer darkness. There shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth." So you just as good as nothing. You're useless. If you just sitting around doing nothing, being stagnant, waiting on phone calls or waiting on whatever, you're good as nothing. God got me. Our people got that bad. God got me. How when you ain't doing nothing? So yeah, and then I remember, and I be talking to the Benai about this all the time. We like probably like a month or so ago, whenever we had that last little meeting, we had NGO meeting, I believe it was. You said something that was key. We was talking about basically the same subject. If nobody is working, what is Christ coming back for or coming back to? He's gonna come back to nothing if ain't nobody's working to build up this kingdom. So, like I said, the kingdom coming by not don't come by observation, just sitting back watching. We got to be out here moving and grooving, putting that footwork in, hitting highways to byways, doing whatever it is we got to do to fulfill our part. And yeah, that's it. That's what I got.
No, real talk, man.
Hey, my bad. I got one more thing I wanted to say too.
Mm-hmm.
Because all right, nobody likes a brat, right? But Israel, man, we are spoiled brats for no good reason. And what I mean by that is, I'm gonna just give you an example. I don't really want to speak on this person's situation because I'm not in their family, right? Everybody talk about 50 Cent son, right? Oh, he got an entitlement problem. He think he supposed to be rich just because his dad rich. Well, that's exactly how we is. We don't want to do the things that's required, you know what I'm saying, in order to receive the kingdom, but yet we want to brag about how we Israelites and the kingdom belongs to us. And it makes us, and not only does it make us stagnant, it give us an entitlement issue. We not willing to do nothing, none of the requirements, but we think we're supposed to receive the kingdom.
Yeah, that's right, man. We ain't trying to build medical centers. We ain't trying to build schools. You know, we still want to be Hebrew Israelites, still going to the regular hospital. We still want to be Hebrew Israelites, you know, still living in their world when we can create our own world. You know what I'm saying? And that's when I really realized, like, okay, that's the big picture. That's the only way we're gonna get out of this situation if we start building our own world. You know what I'm saying?
Real quick though,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
when we start building our own world like we doing, right? The integrity part is huge.
Facts.
Because then you won't with the integrity, if we got people with integrity operating in our society using their gifts, right? We won't have, like, we in another country, right? We won't have extortion, right? We won't have bribery. all the things that we dealing with. You know what I'm saying? Because now you dealing with people with a nation of people who walking and dealing in integrity. You know what I'm saying? So when we build up hospitals, like you say, right? And we had blood transfusions or whatever, however, we got blood in the freezer. We ain't got nobody sitting at the desk when somebody come in, they bleeding to death, but they don't want to give them no blood because they ain't got the money to, you know, slide them a couple of bribery dollars.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? So nah, man, when we come together and we do this thing, it got to be people in place with integrity. Integrity is huge.
Facts.
Right.
That's
So I
facts.
just want to put that out there, man. It's
No,
huge.
that's facts. That's facts, man. That's facts, bro. That's facts. If it's a no, Paul say in little leaven, loving up the whole lump. If it's a hole within the tire, if it's a little non-integrity within the tire eventually is gonna go flat. You know what I'm saying? So we have to definitely, you know, stay a full, you know, tire, even if we got to put a plug on it, you know, hey, put a plug on it, chill out with that, you know what I'm saying? We got to be able to really, you know, do that, man. What you're saying is right on, bro. Right on. And this is the last question, man. I ain't gonna hold y'all brothers too long. This is the last question right here. And then, been a wonderful conversation with y'all, man. Wonderful conversation. Being the son of Jacob doesn't just stop in Africa. It doesn't just stop. We'll be a fool just to try to leave, just try to make that be like that. You know, it doesn't just stop in Africa because our diaspora didn't just stop in Africa. All right. So being the son of Jacob doesn't just stop in Africa. Our Hebrew Israelite diaspora is worldwide, especially in South America, Central America, Puerto Rico, Brazil, you know, in these places, like it doesn't just stop there. This is a global thing, you know, and we have the power to unleash this global, you know, light energy to the world. You know, so what's your take on that? You know, being the son of Jacob doesn't just stop in Africa. Doesn't just stop in Africa. Doesn't just stop. Doesn't just stop with the African slave ships. You know, how y'all feel about that?
Well, I just basically say what Christ said. This gospel shall go across the four corners, and then the end shall come. You gotta hit the four corners with it, and hey, there you have it.
Mm-hmm. We're gonna do it. We're gonna do it, man. Four corners with him. Four corners. Anybody else want to chime in with that? You know, because being the son of Jacob doesn't just stop in Africa. A lot of people try to make it
I'll chime in
make it.
quick.
Oh, you don't do a thing, Aki. Mm-hmm.
You know, you hit a very important question, man. It doesn't stop in Africa. It doesn't stop anywhere, you know, but we have to be, as sons of Jacob, we can't let something happen that you said that's very important. You know, it become a leaven in our lives that because we're sons of Jacob, this is it. You know, the truth of the matter is, you know, what it was John D. Mercer in Matthew chapter 3, verse 9, he says, and do not assume that you can say to yourselves, we have Abraham as our father, for I tell you that Elohim is able from these stones to raise up children for Abraham. We got to remember for who these promises are for. We're a result. Our preservation to this day is because of the promise. It ain't because of you or me. It's because he loved Abraham, Yaakov as well, man. So the premise of all this, man, is love, bro. That's it. You know, as we go and hit these places, like the brother said, the four corners of the earth, we gotta preach this gospel, man, and then the end will come, which is detrimental because it goes back to what you were saying, brother. We gotta put work, hands in the field, you know. So it doesn't stop in Africa. It's supposed to go everywhere, and we're supposed to make other sons of Jacob. I mean, man, a lot of us tend to forget that there was rulings for foreigners to come into Israel since the time of Moses. You know, so and actually even before that, Abraham, he cut the covenant with the Most High, he circumcised every male in his household. It wasn't just his children. Every male got circumcised, bro. I'm of the belief that all them cats were like, yo, what happened, Abraham? He's like, well, what happened was I had this dream, you know, and he revealed these things to me. and all of them, they were hanging out with Abraham, so they know that his God was taking care of him. I mean, come on, he was rich, you know, he had plentiful of everything. So these people who united themselves with Abraham, more likely than not, were like, wait a minute, yeah, this is what we got to do. You know what I'm saying? And we got to keep this unique understanding amongst us and share it to our children and their children and their children, you know. So it doesn't stop in Africa, but it definitely started there. And it's supposed to spread all over the world. Remember, if we're not being persecuted, it means we're not doing our job, man. Because you know who we know that the kingdom has been given to it for this moment is the enemy, bro. Hasatan is gonna come out after you, bro. You know, we see in Revelations that he's mad, he's wroth at the woman and her children who keep the commandments of Yah. You know, speak about the commandments in different groups and see how people react. You'll see how these demons come out, you know. But Yaakov ain't scared, bro. We were given the word. They were given the sword. It's time for the word to break down these stony hearts. But the only way that this is done is like the brother was saying, through your actions. What are you mirroring? Who are we reflecting? Are we reflecting Jacob? Are we reflecting Esau? You know, who are we reflecting? Because remember, it's not just flesh and blood now. This is spiritual, man. You know, we speak life. You know, the power of life and death is in the tongue. So we got to be careful what we speak unto others, because like that brother said, you know, it's through our walk is how people recognize who we serve,
Yeah.
and we want to make sure that we're reflecting the God of Abraham, the God of Yitzchak, and the God of Yaakov correctly. It doesn't mean we're gonna fail. We will. We're human beings. It's bound to happen. But a righteous man falls down 7 times, man. You know, it's all about getting right back up, recognizing your mistake, and say, you know what, yeah, I'm back. Come on, let's keep going. Because it ain't gonna stop with us. And I'll end with this. One thing I've learned through all these years is that if you don't do what Elohim has commanded you to do, he'll find somebody else. He don't need us, man. He does not need us. He will raise another. Look, the perfect example is Shaul. Shaul was the first king of Israel, bro. Everybody's like, yeah, this dude is nice looking. He's strong. He saves us from our enemies. God is with him. But what happened to Shaul? He stepped out of bounds. He started taking roles that weren't his to fulfill. Samuel had to come in that joint like, hey, man, what you do, bro? You lost the kingdom. I had to anoint another. So, and we saw that he anointed the lowliest of the lowliest, because in these amongst the lowliest, Yah seems to find people that are after his heart. So we can never let that pride, you know, because there's nothing wrong with being excited to be, you know, having that pride, like, yeah, man, we the people, but we can't let that cup overfill, because it becomes leaven and we start mistreating others. And then we're no different than our ancestors. Bro, when we look at secular history, it talks about how our kings were tyrants, bro. I mean, look at Menashe, he sliced Isaiah in half. He killed prophets. Like, bro, like, come on. We're wild when we're not in check. We're wild when we don't remember these things, and we get out of line when we don't remember the covenant and the meaning of the covenant itself. So it doesn't stop in Africa, man. The roots are there, and the fruits are supposed to emerge all over the earth.
Yeah. Now we're supposed to make the world a Jerusalem. You know, we it's important, man. What you're saying is important. You know, it has its origin, but that's a part of our diaspora. Our diaspora happened the way it happened, so we can be the light to the world. I believe that's a part of us being the light to the world. The diaspora, it had to happen. We had to go out, you know, in these different places, you know, so we can be the light, you know, to the world, you know. And definitely, man, definitely. Anybody else want to chime in on that? You know, I diaspora doesn't just stop, you know, in Africa. Being the son of Jacob doesn't just stop in Africa. You know, this is something that is globally. You know, there's something that is globally. You know, we gotta keep pushing it. Anybody want to chime in on that? Tonight, we're gonna wrap it up. But Brother Victor, it was a blessing to have you on here, bro. You know, man, and nice to chop it up with you, man. And hopefully we can do some more. You know, man. Hopefully we can start doing some work. You know, getting some institutions built together. You know what I'm saying? Things like that, and you know, changing this world. You know, starting to change this world. You know, use our gifts to build these institutions. You know, if you good with your hands, if you can build, let's find out how we can build build carpentry, you know, how we can build, you know, a carpenter school, you know, how we can build we build our own school with our own hands. You know, we do these things. And this is the real work. This is us coming together. This is us changing the dynamics of this world by doing that, you know, putting the minds together and doing these things. You know, this is how it's gonna be done, man.
Yeah, it
You
was
know,
a blessing to
man.
be with y'all here today, man. Thank you for the invitation. I know you invited me before, bro, but life has definitely gotten in the way of a lot of things, and you know the timing was perfect. You know where we're at today weren't where we were at yesterday, so it definitely was a blessing. It's a blessing to see brothers I already knew from the past, and the new brothers I met today. Hey, y'all bless y'all, keep y'all, may He shine His face upon y'all and give y'all peace wherever you are, to your children, and their children's children, man. You know, start blessing each other. Let's start really having that love and just, bro, spread it out. You know, that's the way, man. So again, it's a pleasure, it's an honor being here. Thank you for allowing me to be on your platform, share some thoughts and perspectives. I pray it was edifying. And if you have any more questions, hey man, just hit me up, bro. You got my number.
Already, man. You know, bro, we're gonna do this work. We're gonna definitely do this work, man. It's a blessing to have y'all brothers on here, man. And I love y'all brothers. Let's keep doing this work, man. Let's keep making this happen. Making this happen. Shalom. Shalom. Let me end
Shalom,
this.
shalom.
Shalom.
I don't even know how to end this, Jane.
We're gonna have to keep talking so it won't be no empty space.
Oh, I know how to end it. I'm